Coming up on Network Africa. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu arrives in Kenya, seeks to improve relations between the two East African countries. Schools in South Sudan reopen after being closed for a year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Plus, Save the Children says almost 5,000 children have been separated from their parents in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Hello and welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin with the state visit of Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan to Kenya as she seeks to improve relations with the country. She's expected to speak publicly alongside her hosts, President Uhuru Kenyatta, at the State House in the capital, Nairobi. President Samia will also address the joint sitting of Kenya's parliament on Wednesday. The visit is seen as an effort to improve relations between the two East African countries fueled by economic competition and which escalated under the administration of former Tanzanian President John Magufuli. Kenya had also been uneasy over Tanzania's lack of a COVID-19 response plan. Failure to agree on COVID-19 protocols at border points led the two countries imposing tariffs on each other's goods. In retaliation, Tanzania barred 4 Kenya airlines, including Kenya Airways, from its airspace. Well, joining us now to tell us more about Tanzania's president's visit to Kenya is Kenyan journalist Abi Agina. Well, we would have more on that story, but in the meantime, Tanzania has issued new guidelines on coronavirus, including a 14-day quarantine period for people arriving into the country. Now, the government says the measure will apply to both foreigners and citizens who will be required to present a test certificate showing negative COVID-19 results. Those arriving from countries with a high number of cases will have to undertake another mandatory COVID test on arrival at their own cost. The directive, signed by the Permanent Secretary for Health, Professor Abel Makubi, is effective from Tuesday. Now, in May 2020, Tanzania lifted the mandatory quarantine for visitors and instead announced that screening and tests would be done on arrival. The change has come under President Samia Suluhu Hassan's administration, who has adopted a different leadership approach, including a science-based approach to tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, very much different from her predecessor, former President John Magufuli. Well, still on the COVID-19 pandemic here in Africa, health experts say a combination of warnings about possible rare blood clots, the rubbishing of vaccines by some leaders, and mixed messages over expiry dates have all contributed to the slow rollout across the continent. The virus has also not hit Africa's 1.3 billion people to the extent that it has ravaged some other countries in Europe, leaving some on the continent doubting the seriousness of the disease.
Health experts worry that public skepticism about taking the relatively small number of doses African countries have battled to procure could prolong a pandemic that has already killed more than 3.3 million people worldwide.
There's lots of people who are still holding out on the vaccine. Quite a number of people are still waiting for something to show up. A lot of people are still very apprehensive about the side effects.
While Ghana and Rwanda have all but finished administering the doses they received last month, the rollout in some countries is so slow it could take years to use the limited shots they have, let alone inoculate their adult population. Kenya, for example, began vaccinating 400,000 frontline health staff and other essential workers in early March after receiving more than 1 million AstraZeneca doses from the global vaccine sharing scheme COVAX. By April 25th, Kenya had only vaccinated 152,700 health workers, and that's according to data from the Health Ministry. The vaccines will expire on June the 28th. Africa's most populous nation, Nigeria, received its first consignment of 3.92 million AstraZeneca shots on March 2nd. By April 23rd, just over 1.15 million doses had been administered.
It was slow at the beginning, very slow, because people were very skeptical. Unfortunately, immediately they started distributing the vaccines. This whole story of blood clots and all sorts of things came up concerning the vaccines. And then to make it even worse, countries like UK, Germany, and France now decided to halt, the use of the vaccines, that the AstraZeneca, Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So that now gave us a lot of problem. That behavior in itself caused a lot of problem in Nigeria.
In Côte d'Ivoire, vaccination centres have been quieter than expected, raising fears that doses will be left unused when they expire in June. The West African country vaccinated 105,110 people between March the 1st and April 21st after receiving an initial shipment of 504,000 doses. At that rate, it will take more than 2 years to use the 1.7 million doses it had ordered from COVAX so far. Democratic Republic of Congo, meanwhile, received 1.7 million AstraZeneca doses from COVAX in early March. It delayed their rollout after several European countries suspended the vaccine to investigate rare blood clots. But 10 days after its inoculation drive got underway, only 1,300 people in the country of 85 million had received a shot. The government is now returning 1.3 million doses to COVAX before they expire. The World Health Organization and Africa CDC have repeatedly advised that the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine outweigh the risks.
Schools in South Sudan have reopened countrywide after having been closed for more than a year to contain the spread of coronavirus. The announcement was made by South Sudan's Ministry of General Education and Instruction, Awut Achul, on Monday in the capital, Juba. Mr. Achul is urging parents to encourage their children to go back to school. The UN's Children's Agency, UNICEF, said it was committing to working with the country's education ministry to ensure learning continues. All right, let's take you back to one of our major stories for today. Tanzania's president in Kenya seeking to improve relations with both countries. Abi Agina, a Kenyan journalist, joins us now for more on this. Abi, good to have you now. Do tell us more about Tanzania's president's visit to Kenya. We understand she will be in Kenya for 2 days.
Well, thank you so much. This is the first visit by the Tanzanian president to Kenya. She comes that there are frosty relations between the two countries on matters trade. This particular visit is quite unique because the Tanzanian president has been on another visit that is to Uganda. So Kenya had to quickly push towards having a state visit from the new president. The major issues that will be up for discussion include matters that are regarding the construction of a gas pipeline that will be linking Dar es Salaam to Kenya, that is through the port of Mombasa. Other key issues, of course, will be harmonizing trade barriers, which have continued to affect investors across the two countries.
Well, there have been some concerns from Kenya about Tanzania's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and also some trade-related discussions that you've just mentioned. Has there been any resolve? What has both leaders, said about this?
Well, in regards to handling the COVID-19 pandemic, the Tanzanian president, Suluhu Hassani, confirmed that she is in talks with the Kenyan authorities when it comes to testing of drivers and, of course, all arriving passengers into Tanzania. She also exuded confidence that Tanzania will be stepping up its testing capacity as a country in a bid to ensure that they are in line with the World Health Organization guidelines. But back to some of the other emerging issues around Kenya and Tanzania. Remember, one of the big concerns has been that Tanzania, actually President Suluhu, has directed that the Kenyan health ministers to craft a framework for speedy COVID-19 checks at border points to avoid crossing delays. So this will be a major lifeline, especially for the business community, which has been having a difficult time crossing over to Tanzania. These are some of the key highlights that characterize the issue around handling of the COVID-19. Remember, Tanzania has been hasn't been taking in any COVID tests, and of course, the country is a close trading partner, Kenya. Kenya, on its part, had closed its borders when it comes to people from Tanzania accessing the country by road.
All right. All right, then. Thank you so much, Kenyan journalist Abby Agina. Well, back here in Nigeria, parents of the abducted students of the Federal College of Forestry Mechanization, AFACA, in Kaduna State have taken their protest to the nation's capital, Abuja. The protest, which started at the Unity Fountain, continued to the National Assembly. On March the 11th, 39 students were abducted from their hostels in the college. 10 of them have been released so far by their abductors in 2 batches of 5.
Information reaching to us show that there is no single security in the bush in search of our children. Instead of us getting an assurance from government, the state government, what we have is threat that we will be arrested if any of us negotiate with the bandits. And we made it clear to them that we are not afraid of their threat. We are not afraid of arrest because we have been arrested since on the 11th. We have been arrested emotionally. We have been arrested mentally since on the 11th of March that this incident took place. So arresting us physically means nothing to us at this point, and we are ready to go to any length. And the other time we met them, they were begging us not to address the press, not to protest, and not to do anything that will jeopardize the life of our children. Now, what are we going to do? The bandit prefer seeing us protesting so that the government can come and settle them. But they are looking at it as if we are jeopardizing the life of our children, which is not.
My own, they pray, make them bring my pikin for me. I say, I no go school. Because why I put that girl for school, make she help me for tomorrow. Now my pikin, they inside bush, make them come out those our children. See 5 of them for a university, they don't kill of them, 5 children. I beg, make government do something. Right. Make them rescue our children.
Still ahead on the program. Experience a night at the museum in Egypt. You get an opportunity to dine among antiquities at Cairo Museum. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Aid agency Save the Children says almost 5,000 children displaced by fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray region have been separated from their parents. Many of them have been arriving at displaced people's camps or informal shelters. Save the Children says they are vulnerable to hunger as well as physical and sexual violence. The agency adds that humanitarian organizations have been unable to reach most parts of the region and the children are having to fend for themselves. 6 months after the war began in Tigray, at least 1.7 million people have fled their homes. Now, this comes as the United Nations continues to warn of worsening humanitarian situation in the region. The European Union has cancelled its observer mission for Ethiopia's June elections, citing lack of agreement on key parameters. The EU's High Representative on Foreign Affairs, Josep Borrell, said standard requirements such as the mission's independence and importing of communication systems for security had been denied. In a statement, he adds that it is disappointing that the EU has not received assurances necessary to extend to the Ethiopian people one of the most visible signs of support for their quest for democracy. In the meantime, the EU is urging the Ethiopian government to carry out free and fair elections, even as it supports the electoral board with 20 million euros. Ethiopia is set to hold elections on the 5th of June after being delayed because of the coronavirus pandemic. The military in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been deployed to take charge in 2 regions hit by violence that's declared to be under siege. The local administration, including governors and provincial assemblies of North Kivu and Ituri provinces, will be suspended for 30 days from Thursday and substituted with military authorities. A government spokesperson said that the military will have powers such as conducting searches on people as well as restricting their movement. President Felix Tshisekedi, in a televised address on Monday, said the move followed the cries of distress from the citizens. The government declared a state of siege in the east on the 1st of May, which would allow the authorities to take measures to address the insecurity in the region. Health matters now. The WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has congratulated all workers that were involved in bringing an end to the 12th Ebola outbreak in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. However, he stresses the need for continued vigilance to prevent a return of the disease and in containing other health challenges.
Earlier today, the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo announced the end of the most recent Ebola outbreak, 3 months after the first case was reported in North Kivu. I congratulate the government, health workers, communities, and all WHO staff who were involved in the response. This has only been possible thanks to a concerted, comprehensive, and consistent approach using vaccines and therapeutics alongside proven public health measures with empowered and engaged communities.
At least 2 people have been killed after a fire broke out in South Africa's Odendal Hospital in Limpopo. One of the dead is said to be a prisoner who had been serving a life sentence and was being treated in the hospital. The fire reportedly started in a COVID-19 ward and spread to other parts of the building. The authorities say they are investigating the cause of the fire. Economic pain is gripping Sudan during this Ramadan period. Despite the basic income rollout in the country, many Sudanese are cutting down on groceries for Ramadan feasts this year as acute inflation blunts the impact of a donor-funded scheme to pay most citizens a basic monthly income.
Prices in Sudan mean running up tabs at local stores and cutting back on evening feasts during the Muslim month of Ramadan. She's one of millions struggling through an economic crisis that has deepened as Sudan tries to emerge from decades of isolation and conflict. Inflation has risen to more than 340%, and there are shortages of everything from power to medicine.
When I go to the market, I find meat costing 1,200 Sudanese pounds. Water and electricity and school fees are expensive. Life is hard. Every time that I go to the market, I find that prices have increased. All the while, I still haven't received the money from the family support program. We hope they would be here by now, especially during these days.
To ease the pain of reform, the government is introducing a donor-funded scheme that aims to provide a temporary $5 basic monthly income to 80% of its population of 43 million people. The rollout is a test for the transitional civilian-military partnership that is due to govern Sudan until 2023. Many Sudanese complain they have not seen the benefits of an uprising triggered by the deteriorating economy that overthrew former President Omar al-Bashir 2 years ago. Fuel price increases have put public transport beyond reach. A survey of more than 3,000 families across Sudan from November to January showed that 30% were unable to buy staples like bread and milk, with price increases worsened by the pandemic. The Family Support Program came about as the government pursues an aggressive economic reform program monitored by the International Monetary Fund, hoping to win relief on at least $50 million in debt and access funding from international lenders.
One of the very good things about this program is that it has begun to transform Sudan's society into a digital one, to improve the electronic payment systems and improve human interaction with the banking sector in general, and its goal is financial inclusion. As I mentioned, I think that previous practices of distributing amount in cash had many problems. Practices were not correct, and this program completely obviates us from any problems of the past. But its main goal is to give people their full rights.
The ongoing reform have included a sharp currency devaluation in February and fuel subsidy cuts over the second half of last year. The IMF said in an October report on the reform that they could lead to economic contraction, higher inflation, and social tension in the short term. Sudan has received $820 million from the World Bank and donor countries for the program's first 2 phases, which aim to cover 24 million people in 12 states for 6 months, the World Bank says.
And as we end the program today, experience a night at the museum at the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization that is home to 22 royal mummies. Visitors can enjoy their Ramadan meals and visit the museum too while dining among the antiquities.
Egyptians can now take advantage of a unique dining experience during the holy month of Ramadan as they enjoy their iftar and suhoor meals at a new restaurant a few meters away from 22 royal mummies recently moved to Cairo's National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. The restaurant, called Mole, was inaugurated 10 days before the fasting month as the first dining spot at the museum.
I think that if the idea is introduced in more museums, Egypt is a very beautiful country, and it has many places where we can deliver such a service so that people get to know the museums. They see the museum and the country, and at the same time, they sat and eat good food in a good place. I think it's a nice experience.
Museum's opening hours are from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., but it's open from 8 p.m. till 11 p.m. specifically for the restaurant's visitors, according to the museum's executive director, Ahmed Jonim. A grand parade conveyed 22 ancient Egyptian royal mummies in special capsules across the capital, Cairo, earlier in April, from the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir Square to the National Civilization Museum.
كنت بتضايق قوي وكنت بحس يعني احنا عندنا حاجات اقيم بكتير من حضاره فعلا عريقه وقديمه بس مش مستغله انه بره من اصغر حاجه بيعملوا بيها حاجه كبيره ويقدروا يشدوا الناس قوي بيها بس انه هنا في مصر ما كانش عندنا ده بس حاسه انه الفتره دي ابتدى يبقى فيه فوكس اكتر على الموضوع ده وانه فعلا يبقوا يعني بيعملوا حاجات تشد الناس وتديهم خبره واستمتاع بالتجربه في مصر يعني.
Located in Old Cairo's Fustat area, the museum was officially inaugurated on April 3rd. The Royal Mummies Hall was opened to visitors on April 18th, according to the museum's website. Fustat, the home of the new museum, was the site of Egypt's capital under the Umayyad dynasty after its conquest in 641 AD.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.